Some people will never insult you to your face. They will smile, they will nod, they will speak gently, they will even call you friend. And still, every time you leave them, something feels wrong. Not dramatic, not obvious, just enough to leave a residue, a heaviness, a tension, a quiet sense that you were not truly welcomed, only tolerated. Most people do not recognize hidden dislike for what it is, because they are looking for obvious hostility. They expect cold silence, open confrontation, direct disrespect. But life is rarely that simple. Some of the people who dislike you most will never announce it. They will hide it behind manners, behind humor, behind polite words, behind a social performance that gives them distance without forcing them to be honest. And that is what makes it dangerous. Because when dislike is obvious, protection is easy. But when dislike is hidden behind friendliness, you can spend months, sometimes years, trying to earn sincerity from people who never intended to give it. You explain yourself more. You become easier to deal with, more helpful, more patient, more agreeable, and all the while your peace is slowly being spent. The Stoics understood something most people learn too late. Not everyone will like you. Not everyone should. And the moment you stop requiring universal approval, you begin to recover your freedom. But first, you have to learn to see clearly. Because hidden dislike always leaks. In tone, in timing, in body language, in absence, in patterns. And once you learn to recognize those patterns, you stop betraying your own perception. So we are going to explore 7 signs that someone dislikes you and is hiding it. Not so you become paranoid. Not so you start seeing enemies everywhere. But so you stop wasting your spirit on people who have already shown you the truth. And more importantly, so you can respond the Stoic way. Not with revenge, not with obsession, not with bitterness, but with clarity, distance, self-respect. Stay with me, because the final sign is often the quietest one of all, and yet it may be the clearest. Why hidden dislike confuses people. Let us begin with an uncomfortable truth. Human beings often prefer polite deception to uncomfortable honesty. That is why hidden dislike works. It gives you just enough warmth to keep hoping. If someone looked you in the eye and said, "I do not like you," it would hurt. But at least it would be clean. At least you would know where you stand. But when someone smiles at you, supports you in words, greets you warmly in public, and still leaves you feeling diminished, confused, or quietly drained, now you are trapped in something far more exhausting. Because you are no longer just dealing with their behavior. You are dealing with your own self-doubt. You start explaining away what your instincts already noticed. Maybe they are tired. Maybe I am overthinking. Maybe that joke meant nothing. Maybe that coldness is just their personality. Sometimes that is true, but sometimes it is not. And when it is not, ignoring it becomes expensive. The Stoics were ruthless about perception. They believed peace begins when you stop demanding that reality look softer than it is. You do not need to become suspicious. You do not need to become cynical, but you do need to become honest. And honesty begins with patterns. Not one strange comment, not one awkward day, not one missed invitation. Patterns. Because hidden dislike rarely reveals itself in one dramatic moment. It reveals itself through repetition. The same strange tone, the same lukewarm response, the same selective absence, the same subtle exclusion, the same feeling again and again and again. So let us get into the signs. Sign 1, they do not celebrate your success cleanly. Imagine sharing good news, a promotion, a business win, a personal breakthrough, a difficult goal finally reached after years of effort. You expect joy, or at the very least warmth. Instead, you get a smile, a nod, a quick "that is nice." And then the moment is gone, they change the subject, they redirect attention, they respond with the right words but the wrong energy. At first, you tell yourself not to read into it. Maybe they were distracted. Maybe they had a hard day. Maybe they did not realize how important it was to you. But then it happens again, and again, and again. Every time something good happens in your life, their reaction feels strangely thin. Not openly negative, just emotionally absent. That matters because people who genuinely care about you do not feel burdened by your growth. They do not become smaller when you become stronger. Your success does not threaten them. It gives them joy, or at least sincere respect. But hidden resentment works differently. When insecure people see you rising, they do not always attack you directly. Often, they simply refuse to honor what is happening. They minimize it, cool it down, cloud it over. They may even congratulate you while quietly hoping life humbles you again. Why? Because your progress forces comparison. And comparison is painful for people who have built their identity on being ahead of you. So they withhold enthusiasm, not because your achievement lacks value, but because acknowledging it fully would force them to confront something uncomfortable in themselves. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that other people's judgments belong to them, not to us. And that is important here, because many people spend years trying to extract pride from people who are emotionally unwilling to give it. They achieve more, work harder, improve themselves, become wiser, stronger, more disciplined, all in the hope that one day the cold person will finally say, "I am proud of you." But some people will never say it, not because you did not earn it, because they do not want to. And painful as that is, it is also liberating. Because once you stop expecting wholehearted support from resentful people, their lack of enthusiasm stops wounding you. The Stoic lesson here is this: a Stoic does not beg to be celebrated. He notices who can hold his joy cleanly and who cannot, and then he adjusts, not with anger, with accuracy. Pay attention to this. Some people can tolerate your struggles far better than they can tolerate your rise, and that tells you everything. Sign 2. They turn every interaction into a quiet competition. There are people who speak with you, and there are people who measure themselves against you. The second type is exhausting. You share a challenge, they have faced something harder. You share a success, they have achieved something bigger. You tell a story, they interrupt with a better one. You mention a goal, they casually remind you of how far ahead they are. Nothing is allowed to simply be yours. Every conversation becomes a scoreboard. And the strange thing is, they may not even realize they are doing it. Insecure people often turn connection into comparison without saying so out loud. They keep score in silence. Who earns more? Who looks better? Who gets more attention? Who seems more admired? Who seems more at peace? And every time life favors you, they feel like they are losing. That is why hidden dislike often feels competitive long before it feels openly hostile. The energy is not friendship. It is surveillance, evaluation, positioning. A true friend walks beside you. A hidden rival keeps checking the distance. The Stoics warned against comparison because it enslaves the mind. A person obsessed with comparison can never enjoy what they already have. Someone will always be richer, more attractive, more accomplished, more praised. And when someone secretly dislikes you, your existence becomes a mirror they did not ask for. You remind them of what they think they are missing. So instead of knowing you, they start competing with an image of you inside their own head. And once that happens, they can no longer celebrate you cleanly. They need to outperform you, outshine you, or subtly diminish you. That is not companionship. That is concealed rivalry. The Stoic lesson: a Stoic does not need to win every invisible contest. He simply refuses to enter them. When a relationship starts feeling like a silent competition, that is not a signal to try harder. It is a signal to become less available to that dynamic. You do not have to explain yourself. You do not have to defend your progress. You do not have to race people who were never running beside you in good faith. Ask yourself this: when I speak to this person, do I feel understood or assessed? That question alone can save you years. Sign 3. They joke in ways that always cost you something. Not every joke is disrespect. Real humor can be warm, playful, mutual, alive. But hidden dislike creates a very specific kind of humor. The kind that keeps returning to your flaws, your awkward moments, your insecurities, your weak spots, your mistakes. Always with a smile, always with an escape route. Relax, I am kidding. You are too sensitive. It is not that serious. But somehow, you are always the punchline. That is not random. People who secretly dislike you often use humor because humor gives them deniability. If you laugh along, they get to keep cutting. If you react, they paint you as difficult. It is a coward's strategy, and many people tolerate it far too long because they do not want to seem dramatic. So they laugh, even when something inside them is tightening, even when every interaction leaves them feeling slightly smaller than before. That feeling matters, because your body often notices disrespect before your mind is ready to name it. Especially when the jokes become sharper in groups. Especially when they arrive the moment you seem confident. Especially when the humor only moves in one direction. That last part is important. Some people cannot bear seeing you secure in yourself. So they use teasing to lower your center. Not enough to create a confrontation, just enough to destabilize you. Enough to remind you that in their presence you should not become too comfortable, too expressive, too proud, too fully yourself. The Stoic lesson. A Stoic does not become humorless, he becomes discerning. If laughter always requires your humiliation, it was never innocent. The wise response is not rage, not a speech, not revenge, just a calm withdrawal of access, less openness, less performance, less willingness to stand still while someone disguises contempt as wit. You do not have to attend every table where your dignity is the entertainment. Remember that. Sign 4. They are curious about your pain but indifferent to your growth. Watch what kind of information people enjoy collecting about you. This reveals more than most words ever will. Some people become deeply engaged when you are struggling. They want to know what happened, who hurt you, what failed, what went wrong, where you feel insecure, what keeps you up at night. They ask questions, they lean in, they seem attentive, and at first it feels like care. But then you notice something. When you begin to heal, their interest fades. When you become clearer, more centered, more disciplined, harder to pity, harder to influence, they go quiet. They wanted the wound, not the recovery, the breakup, not the rebuilding, the failure, not the comeback. Why? Because some people feel most comfortable around a version of you they can feel above. Your uncertainty reassures them. Your pain makes them feel useful. Your confusion gives them emotional leverage. But your strength, your composure, your forward movement, that offers them nothing. And that is when hidden dislike reveals itself. Not everyone who asks deep questions is a safe person. Some people are not building trust. They are gathering material, studying your soft places, learning where you bend, where you bleed, where you are likely to doubt yourself. The Stoics valued self-command. Part of self-command is learning where your inner life belongs. Privacy is not paranoia. Restraint is not fear. Wisdom means understanding that access to your interior world should be earned, not assumed. The Stoic lesson. A Stoic does not hand his heart to everyone who seems interested in it. He watches what they do with what they learn. If someone is fascinated by your weakness but unmoved by your growth, reduce the access. Quietly, without resentment, without performance. Just because someone wants to know more about you does not mean they deserve to. Ask yourself this: who becomes more attentive when I am broken than when I am becoming whole? Listen carefully to the answer. Sign 5. They disappear when support would cost them something. Many people enjoy your company when life is easy, when you are entertaining, useful, confident, easy to be around. But difficulty reveals the true structure of a relationship. When life becomes heavy, when your name needs defending, when support would require courage, that is when hidden dislike often reveals itself through absence. Messages go unanswered, calls are missed, excuses multiply, they become vague, busy, unavailable. Or perhaps they remain around you in easy moments but vanish when the room turns against you. When people gossip about you, when your reputation is being questioned, when speaking up in your defense might cost them comfort. This is where many people misunderstand silence. They think silence is neutral. Often it is not. Sometimes silence is hidden agreement. Sometimes silence is convenience. Sometimes silence is what people choose when they want clean hands but do not mind your isolation. You learn a great deal about a person, by watching what they do when loyalty becomes inconvenient. People who genuinely respect you do not need to fight every battle on your behalf, but they also do not repeatedly disappear whenever your dignity enters the room. And that pattern is painful to accept, because absence often tells the truth more clearly than words. A person can smile with you for years and still fail the first real test of character. Seneca understood that adversity exposes what comfort conceals. Hard seasons reveal which relationships were built on substance and which were only decorative. The Stoic lesson. A Stoic does not beg the disloyal to become loyal. He observes, records the pattern, and adjusts. You do not need to argue with repeated absence. You do not need to plead for support that should have arrived naturally. When someone repeatedly vanishes during moments that reveal character, believe the pattern. Then invest your trust elsewhere. Familiarity is not loyalty. History is not loyalty. Words are not loyalty. Character is. Sign 6. They exclude you in small, deniable ways. This sign is subtle, which is why people ignore it far too long. It is not one dramatic rejection. It is a pattern of small exclusions. The invitation that never arrives, the dinner you discover afterward, the conversation that changes tone when you approach, the inside joke that everyone else seems to understand, the group dynamic that makes room for everyone except you. Each moment alone is easy to dismiss, but patterns are difficult to lie about. Human beings naturally make space for people they want around. They reach out. They include. They remember. They make the effort feel easy. Effort follows affection. That is true in friendship, in family, in work, in love. So when someone repeatedly leaves you at the edge of the circle, do not become desperate for an explanation. And do not become cruel. Just become honest. Because one of the most painful habits people develop is this. They keep trying to decode the excuse instead of accepting the pattern. Maybe it was last minute. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they assumed I was busy. Maybe it meant nothing. Once, fine. Twice, maybe repeatedly, no. At some point, wisdom means letting patterns speak louder than polite explanations. Stoicism is not about becoming suspicious of everyone. It is about refusing to cling to comforting illusions. You do not have to become bitter toward people who exclude you, but you do have to stop calling exclusion connection. And you do have to stop volunteering your energy to spaces that keep placing you at the edge. The Stoic lesson. A Stoic does not chase belonging where he is repeatedly half-welcomed. He steps back, not dramatically, not resentfully, just clearly. Sometimes the most dignified act of self-respect is quiet withdrawal. If someone wanted your presence, they would make room for it. Do not keep arguing with that truth. Sign 7. Your intuition feels uneasy around them. Now we come to the final sign, and perhaps the most important one, because it often appears before all the others become obvious. Your intuition. Have you ever met someone who seemed perfectly pleasant, and yet every interaction left you strangely depleted? You could not prove anything. Nothing dramatic happened. No harsh words, no open conflict. And yet something in you kept whispering, be careful. Most people silence that voice. They demand evidence, confession, certainty. But intuition is often pattern recognition happening below language. Your mind notices inconsistencies before your mouth can explain them. Tiny expressions, shifts in tone, microdelays in warmth, forced smiles, contradictions between words and energy, subtle bodily tension. Thousands of details being processed in silence until eventually a feeling appears. Something is not right here. Now this matters. Stoicism does not teach paranoia. It does not ask you to assume the worst. It asks you to observe honestly. So intuition should not be worshipped blindly, but it should not be dismissed automatically either. The wise path is this. Notice the feeling. Watch the patterns, give it time, let repetition confirm or correct your impression. But do not keep overriding yourself simply because the person has mastered social politeness. People often betray themselves by demanding courtroom-level proof for relationship truths that are already visible in pattern form. You do not always get a confession. You do not always get a clean explanation. Sometimes all you get is tension, fatigue, a recurring sense that your spirit tightens in their presence. That is not final proof, but it is information, and wise people do not ignore information. The Stoic lesson. A Stoic is neither paranoid nor naive. He pays attention. He trusts observation over fantasy. And when a person repeatedly leaves him uneasy, diminished, or internally guarded, he does not keep forcing closeness in the name of politeness. He steps back and lets distance reveal what proximity was hiding. Truth often arrives first as tension. Only later does it become language. Respect both stages. Why people hide dislike. Now, beneath all 7 signs, there is a deeper question. Why do people hide dislike in the first place? Why not simply be honest? Because honesty requires courage, and many people do not have that courage. Open dislike creates accountability. It forces them to own what they feel, to risk conflict, to risk looking petty, jealous, insecure. So instead, they choose safer weapons. Ambiguity, sarcasm, selective support, withheld warmth, quiet competition, strategic absence, social exclusion, polite sabotage. Why? Because hidden dislike protects their image. They get to resent you without looking cruel. They get to compete with you without admitting envy. They get to withdraw from you without taking responsibility. It is emotional cowardice dressed as civility. And if you do not understand this, you will spend too much of your life trying to decode people who have no intention of being honest with you. That is exhausting and unnecessary. Your job is not to force sincerity out of insincere people. Your job is to see clearly and respond cleanly. That is Stoicism, not controlling others, controlling your response. How a Stoic responds to hidden dislike. So what do you do once you recognize the signs? Not how do you expose them, not how do you defeat them, not how do you make them admit it. How do you respond without losing yourself? This is the Stoic path. First, stop oversharing. If someone's energy repeatedly feels off, reduce access. Do not hand your private life to people who have not proven moral safety. Not everyone deserves to know what matters to you. Second, stop seeking reassurance. Many people ruin their peace by forcing conversations that patterns have already answered. Asking someone directly if they have a problem with you sometimes helps, but often it only invites another layer of performance. Patterns are usually a better witness than pressured words. Third, stop performing for acceptance. Once you sense hidden hostility, the temptation is to become more likable, more agreeable, more available. Do not do this. Do not audition for belonging in a room that has already shown you its limits. Fourth, strengthen boundaries quietly. Less explanation, less emotional exposure, less dependence on their approval, not as punishment, as alignment. Fifth, keep your dignity clean. Do not gossip back. Do not start a campaign. Do not become obsessed. People rooted in hidden resentment often want one thing from you: reaction. Do not donate your center to them. Sixth, let distance reveal the truth. You would be amazed how many unclear relationships become suddenly obvious the moment you stop doing all the emotional labor. Stop initiating so much. Stop smoothing everything over. Stop carrying the entire tone of the connection. The truth will surface quickly. Seventh, return to yourself. This is the most important part. The purpose of seeing hidden dislike is not to harden your heart. It is to clarify your life, to become more deliberate about where your energy goes, who receives your openness, which spaces nourish you, which spaces quietly drain your dignity. That clarity is not cruelty, it is self-respect. Here is the deeper truth beneath everything we have said. The real problem is not that some people dislike you. The real problem is believing everyone should. They will not. Even the wisest people in history were criticized, misunderstood, resented, judged unfairly, not because they failed, because human beings are different. Different values, different fears, different insecurities, different perceptions. You can be kind and still be disliked, generous and still be disliked, disciplined and still be disliked, successful and still be disliked, authentic and still be disliked. The Stoic path is not learning how to make everyone love you. The Stoic path is learning how to remain inwardly steady when they do not. When you stop chasing approval, you stop becoming vulnerable to rejection. When you stop trying to win over everyone, you start seeing more clearly who actually belongs in your life. And perhaps that is the greatest freedom of all, not convincing everyone to like you, but becoming so rooted in your own character that whether they do or do not no longer decides your worth. Because your worth was never in their hands, it never was, and it never will be. So if someone dislikes you and hides it, do not panic. Do not chase. Do not beg them to be real. Do not waste your life trying to earn clean energy from a closed heart. See it, name it, adjust, that is enough. Because the strongest person in the room is not the one who exposes every hidden enemy. It is the one who no longer depends on false allies. And that is a very Stoic kind of power. Watch the patterns, trust what repeats, protect your peace. And remember, not everyone who smiles at you deserves a seat in your life. Some people are lessons, some are mirrors, some are warnings. And wisdom begins the moment you stop calling all of them friends.